5 deal killers that should have fix and flippers running away. When you're evaluating a property to decide if it's a good one or not, there's lots of things that can cause you some headaches. But lots of those are fixable, like a bad sink or needing to replace some cabinets. But there's a few things about a property that you should be running away from. And those are the things I want to talk about today. One of the first things is next to commercial property or being visible for commercial property. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some mixed use situations where you may have commercial below and you may have condos above that, and that's the way it was actually designed to be. Those can be okay. What I'm talking about is a Burger King house. So for example, I purchased a property that 3 doors down was a Burger King. I thought it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but then when I got there at 9 a.m. and I could smell charbroiled burgers going, I realized this is actually going to be a problem. You see, the problem is, how much is somebody willing to pay less to live by a Burger King? Well, that variable is very hard to know because we don't have a lot of comps that were next to a Burger King to know exactly what that property is going to sell for. So that was a big gamble. I'm not going to do something like that again because I learned my lesson, and now I want to teach that to you guys. So if you can see commercial property, you should be cautious. If it's next to commercial property within a few doors, I would be concerned unless it was a mixed use type development and you actually have comparables that show properties being sold next to whatever that commercial actually is. So there is some discernment here, but I want to teach you some overall principles. Next thing I want to talk about, on a busy highway. If your property is on a 45 mile an hour highway, or there's 4 lanes, or it's a double yellow line, I am concerned about that. Now, does that mean it's a bad property? Not necessarily, but what it's hard is, how do I value that property? Unless I can value properties where I have that same situation, and I've got 3 of them in that same neighborhood where I know, okay, these just barely sold, I really don't know how much less the new buyer is going to want to pay than the other comparables that are not on the 4-lane highway or the 45 mile an hour strip. So that's the hard thing, is we're trying to decide what's someone going to be willing to take as a discount in order for them to live with that 40 mile an hour highway. Now, the other thing that comes in is you're also reducing your buyer's pool, because I don't know about you, I really wouldn't want my kids running around on a 4-lane highway when that's their front yard. And so if I'm looking at that, I would say, you know what, I don't know if there's a price that I'd be willing to take a discount in order to be willing to live on a 4-lane highway. Most people would say no. Now, maybe you've got somebody else that's a single guy, or maybe you have a couple that doesn't have any kids, something like that. They're like, hey, it really doesn't bother us. And as a matter of fact, we'll sit out on our porch swing and watch the cars go by. The point is, that's a small part of the population. So your buyer's pool is getting cut drastically if you have some of these things. Next thing I want to talk about is boarded up homes. Okay. What is a boarded up home? A boarded up home is where the owner of the home has put boards over the windows, the doors, which basically means nothing is happening there. Now, this is concerning on a few fronts. Number one, it means it's taking a long time to either foreclose on the property. Number two, it means the property's in pretty bad shape. Or number three, it means this property needs a lot of work and nobody's willing to dump the money into that. So that's concerning. Now, how many boarded up homes are concerning? Well, if there's boarded up homes in the area, I would be concerned. I really would be. I would want to know the details, and I would want to know what's happening with this property, how long it's been sitting there, and get a really good idea of what the story is behind that property before I would be willing to move forward on a house that has a boarded up home in the area. My house isn't boarded up, but I'm looking at one and there's a boarded up home in the area. It is concerning to me. I want to know the full story. I don't like boarded up homes in the neighborhood. The more there are, the more concerning it is. If there's just one and I can understand the story, I would consider it, but it's something that you really need to be looking at and taking a long, hard look at. Next thing I want to talk about is crime, okay? Is there crime everywhere? Yes, there is, but there's violent crimes, there's high crimes, and then there's just some crime. Violent crimes are ones that I am not interested in investing in those areas. What are type of violent crimes? Violent crimes are pulling a gun or any of those types of things where there's a shooting, anything that is considered a violent crime, and you can look it up, but those things are more violent that are happening. High crime means there's a lot of crime happening, and low crime means it doesn't happen that often. So if I'm in a violent or a high crime neighborhood, I don't want to be there. there. In a low crime neighborhood, I'm a lot less concerned, but you gotta look and see what crimes are actually happening. You can do that by talking to the police station and getting a good feel for what that neighborhood really looks like. One of the other things that can help you with this is looking at the property if the schools. Okay, so lots of times, this is a bonus one. This isn't my number 5. Well, let's call the bonus one. Looking at the schools, typically schools that are good schools are going to have great neighborhoods because people are moving in to be in those schools and want to be there. So that's something that you can look at as a bonus opportunity. Next, railroad tracks. Now you've got to be careful. There's cargo trains and there's commuter trains. Now, if we're talking about a condo in a downtown area, being next to a commuter train is probably a good idea. As long as it's not outside your window, you're not going to hear it and it's not going to disturb your views. If so, you've got to be concerned about that. But in most places, if there's a cargo train going by at night or you can hear it, that's going to be a concern. And again, that is going to reduce the value of the property. Now, why are all these things a concern? Really just comes down to it's very, very difficult to get an estimate as to what the property is going to sell for if it has these things. It's very difficult to find comps that match this and have multiple comps that match this. And it's very difficult to get in the buyer's mind and say, what would they be willing to take? Now, I thought with a Burger King house at $25,000 or $30,000 would be enough. Well, it turns out it was probably closer to $50,000 discount. I was way wrong because it's a variable I don't have a lot of control over knowing because I don't have comps showing me that exact thing. That's what we want to get away from, speculation and looking at those types of things. That's why this is so important that you understand these and that you think about them. Now, if you want some help on how to nail down fix and flip rehab costs, I put a video together. You're gonna wanna check it out. How to be fast and accurate with rehab costs, why you don't need a contractor quite yet in the process to get started, and my rules of thumb that work even with brand new investors. Check out this video and make it a very profitable day.